You could say that Monster World 4 is just a fun 2D platformer, taking much of its basic gameplay from past Wonder Boy titles. You could also say it's a technical showcase with fantastic 16-bit visuals brimming with color and life. You might even say something controversial, like it has one of the best soundtracks on the console, and I'd agree with you. But when I think about Monster World 4, the first thing that comes to mind is the blue Pepelogoo. This animal buddy acts as your companion critter, and serves to elevate the gameplay and level design above the sea of platformers from that era. Or, at least, it does for a while, because the next thing that comes to mind is how underutilized the companion critter is in later portions of the game. If you know what I'm referring to, you'll know there's some disappointment on the horizon. So to remedy that, I've gone ahead and brainstormed some ideas to extend the companion critter integration throughout later portions of the game that could come in handy for a sequel or a remake. So what is a companion critter? It's some sort of animal or creature that joins the player character on their quest, and augments their mechanics somehow, like debuffing enemies, providing an extra hit point, or granting the player character extra abilities. They can act autonomously, passively supporting the player, or respond directly to your inputs, actively aiding your player character. In my estimation, to be a good companion critter, it can't be an optional addition, but integral to the mechanics of the game. And one really clever thing that can be done with a companion critter is to lock the player character's mechanics, so they have little to no growth throughout the game, but have the critter grow and gain upgrades. It's even better if the player character's basic mechanics are serviceable enough to work without the companion critter, so that it can get captured or incapacitated during the adventure, and the player character must struggle without its aid for a while until reuniting and returning to the optimal state of gameplay. Lastly, the fact that it's a critter, not a character, means that it rarely, if ever, speaks, making it a lot like a pet. Just try to think sheepdog more so than goldfish. I bring up this distinction because there's a unique dynamic between a warrior and a steed, a boy and his dogs, or a kid and his Pikachu that is very poignant and often non-verbal, strongly catering to the storytelling medium of video games. Let's return to the game in question. Back in '94, Westone released as their final Wonder Boy Monster World title, Monster World 4 on the Mega Drive. The game is notable for its colorful Arabian Nights-inspired art design, its reliable gameplay inherited from past Wonder Boy titles, and its absolutely beautiful soundtrack perfectly encapsulating the whimsical adventure, generating perhaps the least Genesis-sounding music on the system. I know some people take umbrage with the usage of leitmotifs, but I'd argue there's more than enough variation that the main melody doesn't become grating. However, in my estimation, the most standout aspect of Monster World 4 is the companion critter mechanic I mentioned, and how it plays into your journey. Before getting into my main idea, I just want to say I think the game is a really fun time. Like I said, it looks and sounds amazing, and in general plays a lot like the Wonder Boy games that came before, although it does drop the open world, almost Metroidvania design for a hub world that leads to the different levels, so it is very linear. I think it generally works fine, but levels are sealed when you complete them, meaning you can miss life drops, which increase your max health with every 10 gathered, and that realization can be harsh on a completionist. Allowing players to revisit past levels would have increased the game's quality of life. Regardless, as long as you're purchasing the latest and greatest equipment, you'll be able to make it through the game just fine. But if you are looking to find all the life drops, I'd recommend keeping a guide open because a handful are quite devious. With a linear journey that is both visually and aurally satisfying, Monster World 4 is an enjoyable little action-adventure game. I should also note the original '94 release was only in Japan, so we in the West got our first crack at it with the fan translation by Demoforce in 2001. It was later officially translated in 2012 for the Virtual Console, PS3, and Xbox 360 digital releases. The Wonder Boy Monster World series was revived with the 2016 HD remake of the original Wonder Boy by CFK, but then really kicked off in 2017 with Lizard Cube's beautiful remake of Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap, followed by Game Atelier's original Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom in 2018, which I have issues with, but now's not the time. This revival continued in 2021, but with a controversial decision to give Monster World 4 a 2.5D remake, developed by Monkeycraft. I have thoughts on this, but I'll save them for the end. With all that out of the way, let's get into the game proper. You play as Asha, a young girl, thus dropping the Wonder Boy title. After hearing the voices of the spirits calling out for help, she leaves her village with the goal of collecting a magical lamp from the Tower of Silence, which she must present to the queen to become an official warrior. As you explore Asha's hometown of Estefan Village and trek through the nearby plains, you learn that Asha is skilled with a sword. She can slash, upstab, and downstab in the air, jump slash, and she can raise her shield while on the ground. One thing Asha lacks compared to prior entries is a set of magical attacks, but outside a handful of situations, you don't really feel their absence. Her walking speed is acceptable, and she can run with a double tap in the direction you desire. Double tap run isn't my favorite gaming mechanic, and it can be clunky here. Asha's no acrobat. Her jump is fairly limited, so her moveset is very combat focused. And I should note that besides some health upgrades and equipment that boosts her attack and defense, this is how Asha controls for the entire game. She herself does not gain upgrades or learn new abilities. In the Tower of Silence, Asha battles through monsters, climbs up chains, opens a few chests, finds some keys, and fells the beast who guards the magical lamp, which contains a genie. Said genie takes Asha to the capital, Rapadagna City. As I've mentioned, Asha's controls will feel familiar to anyone who's played the last couple Wonder Boy games. More than adequate for killing monsters, but fairly limited in terms of platforming. In the capital, our heroine is granted an audience with the Queen, who tasks Asha with saving the 4 spirits of Monster World. To aid her in her task, the Queen allows Asha access to the treasury, where among other things, Asha picks up an egg, which she quickly hatches, unleashing a rare blue Pepelogoo to join her on her adventure. It's unclear at this point what this strange bunny bird ball does, so from here you can either proceed to the Earth Gate and thus the next level, or explore Rapadagna City for life drops. I like how this first visit to the capital is set up because when you first arrive, you don't have to go west to visit the Queen right away. You're free to explore. You can head east to the residential area where there are folks to talk to and some shopping to do, and as you explore you'll notice some areas that are out of reach, so you note them for later, assuming you'll learn some new ability. Then you head to the palace and soon after, hatch this tiny Pepelogoo. Many of the townsfolk will now comment on your new pet, so as you chat you'll likely start fiddling around with the controls to see what this little guy can do. First off, you'll notice you can call your blue buddy over to you with a whistle, and you'll hold him over your head. From here you can throw him, but that doesn't seem to do anything quite yet. Then if you jump with him in your hands, you see he slows your descent and allows Asha to glide. Lastly, if you press the jump button again while gliding, Asha can do a double jump to reach higher areas, sort of like Spyro's glide and hover combo. And then those inaccessible areas that were tempting you before come back to mind. If you continue to explore, you can extend your health bar early. I like this because the controls are taught 2 different ways, by fiddling around in Rapadagna looking for secrets, or through a sign that explains the controls and some platforming challenge if you proceed directly through the Earth Gate. And I love how the companion critter, your rare Pepelogoo, upgrades Asha's platforming abilities, promising more interesting design in the near future. And don't worry, those hidden life drops in Rapadagna will still be there when you return. The next chunk of the game follows a pattern. You head through the appropriate gate, which leads to the main level, where your Pepelogoo helps you rescue the captured spirit. But he isn't limited to allowing you to glide and double jump. In each level, your companion critter helps you overcome various obstacles in creative ways that enhances the exploration. So let's go through each level one by one and see what cool things this blue guy can do. Through the Earth Gate, and after some tutorial platforming, you'll enter the Handera Volcano, home to numerous environmental hazards such as steam vents, fireballs, and lava plumes, which is a real thing and not just a move in Pokemon. So here's how your Pepelogoo pal makes this fire dungeon more interesting. Let's start with the least interesting. You can throw them at switches to press them, which, while mundane, is quite convenient. Whenever you call your little friend, you hold him above your head, where you can double as an umbrella or helmet so that you can pass beneath falling lava rocks and fireballs unscathed. Sometimes you come across these giant lava plumes blocking your path, but by throwing your chum at them, he'll rest atop and provide a platform for you to pass over or ride to a higher ledge. He can interact similarly with steam vents, creating a platform which launches you high into the air. In addition to all that platforming and puzzle solving, you'll occasionally find bombs that destroy rocks blocking the path forward. With combat-focused hallways interspersed throughout, the Handera Volcano level is an organic progression from the Tower of Silence, due largely to your young ally. You're constantly calling him over to platform to the top of rooms, ease slowly down pits, shield your head from fire, ride up lava plumes, or launch from steam vents. As you play this level, it's hard not to consider your Pepelogoo the second half to Asha. She handles the basic locomotion and combat, and he handles the more advanced platforming and puzzle solving. How the two halves gel together is quintessential to the Monster World 4 experience, and this level has that on full display. So as you beat the Flame Wizard and free the Earth Spirit, you're left wondering what else you'll be able to do with your Pepelogoo in the following levels. The genie returns Asha to Rapadagna, allowing you to bring your clandestine comrade to the Pepe tree, which bears a single fruit. He eats it and grows larger, though I'm pretty sure this doesn't affect gameplay outside the next level. Regardless, you can also sell your gold bars and do a little shopping to upgrade your equipment. Your main objective is to locate the moon medallion to unlock the next gate. You arrive near a river, and some quick traversal lands you in the stream sanctuary, which is full of water fountains, water pipes, pools of water, strong currents, electric traps, and even a raft near the end. Unfortunately, the most use you get out of your Pepelogoo, besides platforming around, which is here in abundance and is still fun, is blowing out torches, which removes electric traps that block your path. When you do come across one of the pools and accidentally fall in, call out to your compatriot and he'll dive in to save you from drowning. He even has a cute little animation to shake himself dry. And when you get to the single raft in the whole dungeon, you hold the fellow and he blows air to propel you through the water, and that's all it is. You cross this one pool with no obstacles. It's almost like this mechanic just made it in, or they had to cut other uses of it out. Whatever the case, it's pretty forgettable. I assume that when your Pepelogoo partner enlarged from eating that fruit, he gained the strength to pull Asha from the water and the lung capacity to blow out a big puff of air, though apparently not enough to put out these random campfires that block your path forward. No, for those Asha finds a bucket, which you must fill at water fountains to put out the campfires. Now it may seem like your sidekick is sort of taking a backseat to the level gimmicks, especially the water pipes, and he is, at least compared to the volcano. The focus here is placed squarely on traveling along flowing water, especially through pipes, to navigate the labyrinth. It's still a compelling level to explore, but the experience is lacking on the companion critter innovation front. With the water wizard defeated and the moon spirit freed, the genie brings you back to Rapidogna. There's another fruit on the Pepe tree, so you can again grow your Pepelogoo. This time he fills out to the point where you can't walk while holding him, but you can still glide and double jump. You can do your requisite shopping, and upon finding the sun medallion, you can pass through the next gate. After arriving in an icy desert, you make your way to a frozen pyramid, and the Sphinx informs you that to enter his door, you must first clear the challenges behind the other two doors. The Ice Pyramid is unique in that it's split into 3 dungeons, each with its own focus, though the objective in each is the same. Find the 5 statues and place them in the correct order in the pedestal room to unlock the dungeon's boss. In the first dungeon, you need to find passwords to open certain doors. Some of them are incomplete, and you need to do a little trial and error to complete the password. Besides platforming, there's really no Pepelogoo integration here. The second dungeon's gimmick is hidden doors that you can find by throwing your pet, since his sense of smell is so strong. I like that they got him involved, but I think something like a haunted house would be a better setting for this mechanic. There are also a couple geysers of super chilled air that freezes your plump Pepelogoo into an ice block to provide extra height to gain access to floating doors. The third and final dungeon has a few things going on. There are numerous patches of extra slippery ice. While sliding, you can't stop unless you call your hefty helper over so he can weigh you down. You need to do this to enter certain doors. There are also openings stopped up by ice, and your mate can melt through them. And as you explore, you'll be waylaid by many giant saw blade traps attempting to slice you to ribbons. The Ice Pyramid is notorious for its puzzles and confusing layout. It's the only level to provide a map, which I found myself using often to keep my bearings. When utilized, it makes this inscrutable level manageable. However, the Pepelogoo uses are questionable. Slowing yourself down on slippery ice probably could have had cooler uses than lining you up to enter doors. Maybe you could slow yourself before falling down a pit or impaling on spikes. Throwing your amigo to sniff out hidden doors is also quite suspect. Perhaps a more action-oriented segment like cruising down an ice slide, he could direct you down the path that doesn't lead to spikes. And melting ice is almost as throwaway as the raft. However, I do like freezing him to make a block, although it's tragically only used twice. I think 1 or 2 true ice block puzzles would have rounded out the experience. Knowing what was coming, I actually had a pretty good time with the whole level, but that first time through can be tricky. And for the second level in a row, the companion creator innovation is pretty lacking. After besting the Ice Wizard, freeing the Sun Spirit, and returning to Rapidogna City, you hear that the Queen has turned evil and you go to see her. Her corrupted Pepelogoo launches a rocket at Asha, but your Pepelogoo flies in to take the hit for her. The Queen then attacks, and a distraught Asha fights back. She soon flees, leaving Asha to mourn at your blue buddy's stone-cold corpse.
He's dead, Jim.
Nah, he's just incapacitated, and won't be with you for the rest of the game. That's right. Not only will the last 2 levels not have any new Pepelogoo interactions, you don't even get to glide and double jump anymore. I get that the story beats necessitate this change up, but the story beats didn't need to play out like that. I'll talk more about that later. For now, I'll give you a brief overview of these levels devoid of your best bud. The Wind Gate leads you to a magic carpet section with one annoying part right near the end where falling off forces you to redo the whole thing over again. It's okay, I did it. You reach the Sky Castle, which is a winding sequence of mechanical obstacles like hidden springs, wind fans that blow you back, time-sensitive switches that open spike gates, and conveyor belts that move around, including these giant block variants that hurt you and send you back to the beginning of a room if you touch them. There's even a section in the middle where you walk through an archway and shrink to Lilliputian size, leading to a mini-boss who's blocking the other gate, which returns you to normal size. Just make sure you grab all the nearby chests afterward because you can't return to this room later. This might be a good time to mention you can use the magic lamp to have the genie transport you back to Rapadagna City at any time, and now's a great time to do it because you should have 3 gold bars, and the gold bar lady pays you 9,999 gold coins per bar, whereas I believe she only pays 5,000 for them after beating this dungeon. The only downside is you have to work your way through the dungeon again to get back to where you were, including the magic carpet section, but actually ignoring the already pilfered side paths made the return trek a minor hassle at worst. But there are some obnoxious segments towards the end of the level, frequently involving climbing chains, and I think more Pepelogoo platforming sections would have been preferable. Alright, you beat the Cloud Wizard and free the Wind Spirit, making it back in time to fight the Queen again. This time you can't beat her, so when Asha's on her last heart, Big the Cat appears to save you.
Oh, it's a windy and sunny day.
Nah, it's just your Pepelogoo, miraculously returning and singing a song that purifies the Queen from the darkness.
Left, right, up and down.
Furious, a mysterious ancient evil opens a hole to its fortress. However, Asha must make this journey alone, because Big the Cat likes the Queen way better. I mean, come on, Asha's cute, but look at those pixels. So you jump down the hole alone and make your way through the underground fort. Frankly, it's really just a bunch of combat rooms one after the other. You even get to refight 4 of the mini-bosses. So the Pepelogoo's skills wouldn't have mattered much, though maybe could have helped with the combat. Anyway, you come to the final chamber, beat some sense into 4 corrupted Pepelogoos, and fight Fear Incarnate. If you have the legendary equipment set, he's actually quite easy, but halfway through the fight, Big the Cat bursts in to block his eye, leaving him petrified, allowing Asha to continue the slaughter unharassed. Defeating the creature brings peace to Monster World. The Queen makes Asha a lord and the people celebrate. However, Asha spends her time praying ceaselessly for a companion to return, even when told it's futile. Lo and behold, the purified Pepelogoos you fought earlier bring your blue buddy's petrified form back to the fountain, where the holy water revives him and reunites our heroes, bringing the adventure to a happy conclusion. Overall, while I have my complaints, especially concerning missing out on all the companion critter potential by putting him out of commission with 2 whole levels to go, I still really enjoy the game for all those reasons I listed earlier. And for all my grumbling, I actually like what most of the dungeons have to offer, even the Ice Pyramid and Sky Castle, though I do and always will hate that magic carpet section. Needless to say, I do think they could have gone harder on the Pepelogoo integration, especially when they committed to not upgrading Asha's skill set. And while your blue friend does grow along the way, the growth leaves a lot to be desired. So here are some ideas of how the companion critter aspect might be improved if they, I don't know, ever decide to remake the game? The main change I'd make is keeping your Pepelogoo around for all 4 gates. I'll explain in more detail soon, I promise. I also like that your companion critter grows during your journey, but I don't like how he gets so big that Asha can't walk while holding him. In context, with an ice dungeon on the horizon, it works, but my idea of a companion critter never has to eat a downgrade with an upgrade. So keep his growth, but make the increments smaller to avoid making him worse. Next, I'd rework items that are completely separate from your pet, like the bombs and bucket. Instead, I'd make the bombs too heavy for Asha to carry, so your Pepelogoo carries them in his mouth. But then Asha can't use him to platform around, so the puzzle would be preparing a path to the door so that Asha can get there and direct where he should drop the bomb. In a similar mode, instead of carrying water with the bucket, I'd have your sidekick carry the water in his mouth, and then Asha can direct him to the campfire to put it out. And then, since we're not making him overweight, maybe the ice pyramid could have a heavy object like a cannonball or something that your Pepelogoo needs to grab in order to slow Asha down on slick ice. Perhaps the main mechanic of the dungeon could be holding onto the cannonball at all times so you can utilize its weight whenever needed. I also wouldn't mind any of your pals' unique mechanics reappearing in later levels. Perhaps they could bring back throwing him onto geysers to create a platform, or scooping up water or some other liquid to transport elsewhere. or use them to weigh yourself down on slippery floors, or in windy conditions. I think these are some realistic ways of recycling what already exists in-game to sustain your blue Pepelogoo's role in the adventure. And now for something more experimental. This is one of those ideas that would require a whole new level design philosophy, so I present it with a follow-up in mind, not a remake. This idea is to have the Pepelogoo gain new abilities over the course of the journey. I imagine him gaining these abilities by finding some kind of special item in each level. For instance, perhaps in each level you're looking for some special crystal, imbued with the element of that level. Imagine a fire level, for example. In a chest you find the pristine fire crystal, and your Pepelogoo immediately swallows it. He then gains the ability to breathe 3 fireballs, after inhaling fire, or maybe a native hot pepper. This skill could be used to light torches, burn vines, etc. The water crystal could allow him to inhale water, or
Big juicy melon!
and then spray it out to put out torches and campfires, and maybe spin water wheels. With the ice crystal, he could gobble up snow or ice berries and spit out snowballs to freeze water and enemies. And the wind crystal would allow him to inhale tornadoes or gale seeds, and then while gliding, do a tornado spin for extra height. Your Pepelogoo would retain these abilities, so past mechanics and puzzles could return later in the game. Of course, a lot of these mechanics are pretty basic video game elemental abilities, but I think it could be a foundational idea to build more creative mechanics off of, and love how it continues to push forward the idea of your Pepelogoo progressing and gaining abilities, while Asha's skill set remains static throughout the game, the perfect companion critter dynamic. Lastly, let's discuss reworking the story beats so that your partner can join you in the Sky Castle level. I think you can still fight the Queen after the Ice Pyramid, but I'd make this the fight where she beats you handily. Instead of killing you, she calls her guards in to detain you and send you both to the Sky Castle to be imprisoned, effectively axing the magic carpet section. Once there, the monsters separate Asha and her Pepelogoo, placing Asha in a jail cell and her ally in a cage far away. You escape the cell and play a good chunk of the level alone, passing a number of ledges and collectibles just high enough to be out of reach. This respects the original intent of the developers, and a lot of the original level design could be repurposed. But once you reach the mini-boss and defeat him, you rescue your Pepelogoo and return through the level as the dynamic duo, gliding and double jumping to your heart's content. This soon leads you to the second half of the level, which you couldn't reach alone, and you press on to fight the Cloud Wizard. When you return to Rapidogna and face the Queen, you have all 4 spirits on your side, so this time you beat the Queen. Out of desperation, she has her corrupted Pepelogoo launch the rocket, and your dear Pepelogoo saves you and is incapacitated. Battered but not beaten, the Queen is the one who makes the great hole to the underground fort. With her partner incapacitated, Asha knows she must continue on her own to stop the Queen. You hop down the hole, fight through the combat gauntlet, and make it to the boss room. You find the Queen conversing with Fear incarnate, and when she spots you, she attacks. This is when Big the Cat returns to sing a song to purify the Queen. He remains with her to protect her while you fight the final boss like in the game, and your loyal Pepelogoo blocks its petrifying gaze and turns to stone, allowing Asha to finish it. Now the genie would carry both Asha and the Queen out together, and then the ending would play out similarly to the game. I think this change would work because there's still an element of the Sky Castle where Asha's on her own, but then she rescues her comrade to return to the optimum gameplay. And then, before confronting the Queen, the Sage of Save could tell you that's a point of no return, and you'd be allowed to revisit past levels to find any missed life drops. I always thought saving the Queen before the final level was weird pacing. Stringing along her plot thread to right before the final boss feels more organic to me. So there you go. That's how you can take the fun companion critter mechanic and stretch it across most of the game. So if they were to make a sequel or remake the game, what the hell? They did release a remake, Wonder Boy, Asha, and Monster World. And instead of following in the footsteps of Lizard Cube and Game Atelier, with beautiful 2D backgrounds and characters, Monkeycraft went with a 2.5D aesthetic for their remake. Those trailers did not inspire confidence, but to my surprise, I found the game pretty enjoyable. I mean, it's not that surprising in some sense because they were still working with Monster World 4 as their base game, and as I've said, I like that one a lot. So let me finish this all up with some thoughts on what I liked and didn't like about the remake. Oh, and almost none of my suggestions were used, so maybe I should have made this a few years ago. Negatives first. I'm assuming this game was made on the cheap. While Monster World 4 was a treat for the eyes and ears when it came out on the Mega Drive, the remake definitely isn't cutting edge. The 3D graphics held up better than I thought they would based on the trailers, but the character models and animations lack some of the charm and personality of the original. The background details and animation are kind of a mixed bag. On the one hand, they faithfully translate many of the features from the original into 3D. On the other hand, that translation also sacrifices intricate animation effects that gave the world life, like the heat shimmer in Handera Volcano, the haze in the Ice Pyramid, and the droplets falling from vines in Stream Sanctuary. The 3D environments are serviceable, taking inspiration from what came before, but they never reach the allure and mystique generated with far fewer resources in the original. The music is much worse off. At least, that's what I was going to say right after playing the game. However, giving the tracks a second listen has left me conflicted. Some of the arrangements sound like they took the original compositions, swapped in generic synthesized instruments, and called it a day. Others, following the same strategy, sound pretty good owing to the strengths of the original compositions. And for a small number, you can tell the arrangers went all out, making a valiant effort to bring something new to favorites like Headbanger, Labyrinth on the Sky, and Heart of Icegrave. Regarding the music and visuals, I think they are adequate for a Monster World 4 remake, but I wish they could have gone the way of Lizard Cube, where the graphics and soundtrack really elevated the Dragon's Trap experience. By the way, if you're not a fan of the arrangements, you can enable the original soundtrack by inputting the old sound test code on the title screen. Let's get back to the negatives. The whistle sound effect is quite annoying now. There are 200 life drops instead of 150, yet you still max out at 15 blue hearts. There's still no run button, which is questionable since the version of the original game packaged with the physical copy of the remake, at least in some regions, modded one in. And there are definitely enough buttons, so that was a head scratcher. Your sword seems to only contact a single enemy per swing, but only sometimes, which was never true in the original. Additionally, you have to activate the magical hit instead of it just happening when you've hit enough enemies. They also reworked Rapadogna Castle and the outside of the Ice Pyramid into 3D spaces for some reason, and while it's not terrible, I'm not a huge fan. You're stuck on one of two planes, side to side or forward to back, unless you're in a corner or see one of these spots on the ground. I guess it gives the map a fuller three-dimensional feel, but I don't think exploring them is very rewarding. Especially the Ice Pyramid, which hides a grand total of 2 life drops in difficult or impossible to see locations. But the worst change is in the residential area of Rapadogna City. Instead of the layered design delineated by height in the original, they actually cut the exploration into 4 layers, front to back. So you start your exploration on the front layer, on the ground. In order to access the second layer, you must go through one of only 2 buildings that have access to the roofs, putting you on the second layer. To get to the third layer, there are 2 random spots on the roofs that allow you back there. If, while on layer 2 or 3, you fall between buildings and there's no way back up, you have to exit onto layer 1 and go back through either building to return to the right layer. It's so dumb, especially when you first start exploring the area. It's like, what the hell is going on? Oh, and you can only access the 4th layer here or here, and you can't get out of it any other way, of course. Once you get it, it's fine, it works, but the layout of the city in the original was way more refined and made more sense in a 2D plane. Now the positives. The gameplay feels more modern. For instance, while running, falling down a ledge or jumping doesn't cut your speed anymore, so traversal is a lot faster. You can even run holding the Pepelogoo, who Asha refers to as Pepe in this version, before the Ice Pyramid. Asha in general feels more fluid to control, making the original seem clunky by comparison. You can carry multiple elixirs at once, too. You also keep all of your equipment to be swapped at your fancy, mainly useful for switching to the appropriate elemental shield. Asha now gains some height when jumping from ropes and chains, alleviating some jank. Pepe can find hidden doors without having to throw them at them. Some of the buttons in the Sky Castle are no longer time sensitive, which I appreciate. You can also save anywhere, but be careful. The Sage of Save is no longer strategically placed in dungeons, so you have to remember to save yourself. Death means loading up the most recent save. This allows you to create more backup saves, specifically right before fighting the Queen after the Ice Pyramid, since that's when you lose Pepe. They also allow you to revisit any gate levels, which is what I wanted, and it's nice, but you can't go back to Estefan Village and the Tower of Silence, so if you miss any life drops there, tough luck. The debug shop gives you an item which allows you to access Pepe at any time, even while he's incapacitated, at any level, but that's only accessible during a New Game Plus. Overall, while the game's art and sound averages around acceptable, and the design changes are questionable, the modernizations and quality of life improvements made this a far more enjoyable experience than I anticipated. And the fact that in some regions, physical copies come packaged with the original game sweetens the deal and should make all fans happy. The companion critter mechanic makes Monster World 4 and its remake a unique and engaging experience. I like the idea of Asha, the simple warrior who can't do a whole lot else, so her movement is limited to walking and running, jumping a small amount, climbing, and then warrior stuff like slashing and raising her shield. But those abilities aren't enough, so she needs her trusty Pepelogoo to aid her, granting her augmented jumping capabilities and greater interaction with the world around her. And his abilities change as he grows, all characteristics of strong companion critter gameplay. So, thoughts? This is a very insular view of a single mechanic of the game, but in my opinion the companion critter is the special sauce that makes this game stand out in a sea of 16-bit side-scrollers. What I don't know is if there are other games that pull off the companion critter. The games I mentioned in the intro are all too narrow or optional for my tastes. Just thinking through games I've played, I know that Pokemon Ranger doesn't pull it off. The Pokemon you capture are more like consumable items, they don't stick with you the whole journey, besides your partner Pokemon. And I've never played it, but Crusader of Senti has animal allies. From what I've seen, they tend to act more like buffs to your character's walking speed or sword throw. Any other games that really hit the companion critter aspect? The first game that came to my mind was The Last Guardian, another one I haven't played, but I'd be interested to hear from someone who has if this video reminded them of that game. Well, that's all I have on that. Thanks again for checking this out, and I hope to catch you in the next one.